having ratios that are really high for one candidate and numbers that are really high for one candidate that drop at 4 in the morning, only in swing states that don't marry up with the ratios and numbers elsewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a problem. You know, when President Trump says something on a interview, he was on Maria Bartiromo's excellent show this weekend. There's always, he's hit the nail on the head when all the right people get upset. By all the right people, I mean all the losers. So whenever Tater, George Costanza over at CNN gets upset, and what's his face, Aiden McLoser over at Mediaite, whenever they lose their marbles over an interview, President Trump is typically over the target. And for all the knocks on President Trump and what he says in interviews, and there are lots of them, every time he opens his mouth, some media loser has something to say. When he says something that's particularly insightful and he's onto something, maybe he doesn't say it in words they like, he's onto something when the media loses their minds. Let me get right to it. Here's clip number 1, President Trump yesterday. And I will say this, maybe we should get a different term for these votes that came in late at night other than massive dumps, which I laughed at too. Gotta have a sense of humor. No, yes. Whenever we're talking about massive dumps, conversation can go in some disturbing directions. But listen to President Trump on a serious note, talking about these voter dumps that happened late at night. And why was everybody upset? I'm going to tell you in a minute. Play this.
What happened, if you watched the election, I was called by the biggest people saying, congratulations, political people. Congratulations, sir, you just won the election. It was 10 o'clock and you looked at the numbers, and I'm sure you felt that way. This election was over. And then they did dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps in Michigan and Pennsylvania and all over.
I'm sorry. I know it is a serious topic.
Sounds like a possible drop.
I assume we'll hear that again from Joe. We'll hear that in some, just like his command man.
Carefully.
Massive dumps are always a problem. But they can be a particular problem when the statistical abnormalities don't add up. I said to you in the opening, teasing this segment, folks, it's very possible to have ratios that are let me explain this very simply. Joe, and if this doesn't make sense, I've already explained it to Paula. She got it. You need to stop me right away. It is, having run for office myself and been on the other side, receiving ends of these massive vote dumps, it is not uncommon for ratios to be abnormally high. It's also not uncommon for gross numbers of votes in liberal cities to go towards, net number of votes to be very high for Democrats. Let me give you an example. You have that town in, Vermont or New Hampshire. Every year, they're the first ones to report. They were like, oh my gosh, this year Biden won 18 out of 20 votes. Folks, that's not unusual. It's not evidence of fraud. If you were to pick randomly a building on Central Park West in Manhattan and get 80% plus votes for Biden in that building, would anybody say that's evidence of fraud? Hell no. It's Manhattan. I'll do you one better. Pick up a high rise in San Francisco in Nancy Pelosi's district. If you were to get a ratio of 85% Biden, 15% Trump, would anybody be like that's fraud? No. Ratios of votes, Democrat to Republican or Republican to Democrat, in small numbers are not unusual. You tracking, Joe?
Yeah.
Factor 2, while we're talking about massive dumps, the deuce. Factor 2 on this one. Having net numbers of votes go for one candidate in liberal areas and high numbers is not unusual either. The fact that Joe Biden got probably 20, 30,000, who knows how many more votes than Donald Trump in the city of Baltimore, Maryland, which is very liberal, is not unusual either. But having ratios that are really high for one candidate and numbers that are really high for one candidate that drop at 4 in the morning, only in swing states that don't marry up with the ratios and numbers elsewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a problem.
You just heard Dan Bongino.